Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. So for the inclusive introduction, I wanted to explain my name. So my name is Nori, N-O-R-I, and my last name is Jabba, J-A-B-B-A. So Nori is Japanese, and it's short for Noriko. My parents lived in Japan before I was born and named all their kids Japanese names. And then I married a Lebanese man, and I was actually born Barbara Noriko Wood, but I never went by Barbara Wood. My parents always called me by my middle name, and I shortened it to Nori as a nickname in first grade because nobody could pronounce it. They would say Noriko, and I didn't like it. It's Noriko. So my teacher said, "How about Nori?" And I said, "Great, Nori it is," and here I am. So yes, I have this very diverse name and was born with a very generic name, so it's kind of fun. So I'm also an identical twin, and my twin, I was saying, somebody downloaded my audiobook, and I said, the thing that freaks me out the most is that my twin and I have identical voices. We don't look alike that much, even though we're identical, but our voices are alike. So when I hear myself, I feel like she's here. So it's kind of fun. All right, well, let's get started. So why am I here? I first have to make sure I do this the right way. There we go. Why are you here? We're here because BOMA is very good about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in fact, this is from BOMA Views in 2023. And I'm going to read it. Embracing diversity and recognizing the unique contributions of individuals from all walks of life and generations is essential to building a more inclusive and equitable society. But only 50% of companies include age in DEI strategies. So thank you to BOMA for doing this and including age. So we're going to learn a little bit about ageism today and why I am talking about ageism. And it wasn't my plan to set out to become an ageism expert, but it was by default because I suffered ageism. So you'll hear about my story and how I learned a lot about it and what to do about it. So let's start off with what is the definition of ageism. I really like this one from Indeed. Ageism in the workplace is where a candidate or employee is discriminated against because of their age. Although ageism can be experienced by both younger and older workers, it most commonly impacts those over 45. And I want to point out, too, that we're going to talk about the laws, but the law covers you if you're over 40. And ageism also affects people of all ages, as Ebony said, but it only covers you legally if you're over 40. So there are many different types of ageism. And the last one, reverse ageism, isn't even included in the definition. But the definitions are expanding because people are realizing that ageism can actually occur at every age. But institutional ageism is when a company perpetuates ageism through their policies and corporate culture. Interpersonal is social interactions, including social interactions in the workplace. Internalized is when older people, or it could be younger, feel victimized by ageism and start believing it and start treating themselves with ageist behavior. And then reverse ageism is when it happens to younger people. So how prevalent is it? Throw out some answers. Who thinks, what number do you think percent of people have experienced ageism over age 50? Throw out an answer. 73, 100. The answer is 93%, according to AARP. So pretty prevalent, 93% of people over age 50, and I put that sign up 55 because it gets worse as you age. But that's a huge number. So to not include it in DEI strategies is a real mistake because it is a big problem. So what does it look like? I put this picture up because this is a real story. My husband works at a startup. with a lot of 30-somethings. In fact, his bosses, he had 2 bosses, were in their early 30s, the co-founders of the company. And for his 60th birthday, the company threw him a party, and it had a cake with an 80 on it. And they all joked around, what an old man, somebody wore a gray wig. They just made fun of him. And he laughed and went along with it, and ha, ha, ha. And there were maybe 1 or 2 other people who were older workers over age 50, but he was definitely the oldest one. And so he came home that night and told me about it, and he was kind of pissed off. He felt humiliated. And he didn't say anything, but he could have, because that is really not a good thing to do. So ageism can show up in hiring practices, not getting promotions, your corporate culture, which this is a great example of, policies, social events at work, and meetings. It can show up everywhere at work. So what is it? It's when you are passed over, when you're looking for a job, applying for something, or a plum assignment or project comes up. You're overqualified, you're not a good fit. And sometimes it's about money. They want somebody for a job that costs less. It is the hurtful comment said in jest. Okay, boomer, and that's okay, boomer, and hey, boomer. This has been really popular over the last 10 years. And I am a baby boomer. And boy, it pisses me off whenever I hear somebody say that. Fortunately, I haven't heard it lately as much, but over the last decade, this was really, really popular. And it's just insulting. And it's the eye roll. So how many of you have talked to some worker who might be older and they didn't know something that they really should have known, or that everybody knows? I've done this. Maybe not the actual eye roll, but I'll tell you a story about my former boss. And he was only 2 years older than me, or maybe it was 1.5 years, but he seemed much older. And he didn't know how to use Google Drive. And we were all using Google Drive to collaborate on something. And he said, I don't know how to use Google Drive. Do we have to use Google Drive? And internally I did the eye roll, like, how can you not know how to use Google Drive? But what I did was I told him, I'm gonna help you. You need to know how to use Google Drive, so I will help you. So I did. But we've all been there. We've all had that eye roll. You've either done it or felt it. And it's the dismissive laugh that just like, you have got to be kidding me, right? We've all done that too. So my journey, and it was serendipitous walking here today because I walked by my office building at 123 Mission, where I started my career in the early 90s and worked for PG&E. And I looked young for my age. Everybody thought I was the intern. So I spent my entire 20s being called the intern. And here's a picture of me right here, trying very hard to look mature, professional, dress up, wear scarves. I still have that scarf, by the way. But I became the boss. And this guy started with the company the year I was born. And this guy had decades more experience than me. And they reported to me. And it worked out really well. But once I was brought into a meeting, and I brought him with me, and somebody said, I don't know if she's the intern or the secretary, but she doesn't need to be here, to him. And he said, she's my boss. But I looked young, and I was a woman, so they assumed I was a secretary. So this is what I felt people saw me as. And you're supposed to laugh at this picture because it's hilarious. Look at that mouth of braces. Oh my God, that was me at 16. When I was 16, I looked 12. When I was 20, I looked 15. When I was 30, people thought I was in college. And then I took time off in my 30s at age 36 to be a stay-at-home mother for a few years. And I was fortunate to be able to go back to work in my 40s. But all of a sudden, I went from this to this dinosaur. I didn't even get to experience not experiencing ageism. So it happened literally overnight. I just became a dinosaur. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I show this slide again because when I was job hunting, after consulting for several years, I wanted to go back to work. I missed the camaraderie. My kids were older. I wanted the benefits. And I liked being on a team. Consulting is great, but the money's up and down, no benefits, and you're by yourself. So I was always told, if I got an interview at all, we found somebody who was a better fit. That's code. We decided that you're overqualified. That's code for you're too expensive. And I started feeling like this was my reality. This is how people saw me. It was very upsetting, and it did a number on my self-esteem. I'd lost my seat at the table, and it was clear, and I had no idea how to get it back. You know, I had over 30 years of experience, a long list of awards. I was even Businesswoman of the Year for San Mateo County in 2011. I had connections. It all meant nothing. Nobody would hire me. So I stopped. I said, enough of this. I'm going to figure out what's really going on. Is this me? Is ageism real? Why is it so hard for a middle-aged woman to get a job? And I wrote a book about my journey. But the first thing I did was I had to realize that I had to look at the table differently. And this is how we look at the typical table of success, right? Mostly white men, and you're invited to the table. But what I quickly learned is I had to build my own table and take my seat at the head and invite people who were there to challenge me, strengthen me, coach me, and support me along the way. So I did. And I learned a whole lot in the journey. The first thing I learned is that older workers make up a big part of the workforce. 25% right now are over 55. And that number has doubled in the last 20 years. And there will be a lot more older workers in the future. By 2040, it'll be over 40%. And this is from Mona Morshed, who's global CEO of a company called Generation. It's a nonprofit. And yeah, that's a big number. So it's growing. And older workers are retiring later. Social Security, you will get penalized if you take it before 67 now. It used to be 65. And 70 is going to be you don't get any penalty if you wait till 70. And some people are having to work longer because of financial reasons. The world is expensive and it's getting worse. So we've learned that ageism is real, and there will be more older workers in the future. But how bad is the problem really? The costs are much higher than you think. And the main reason I think ageism exists is for money, for efficiency. There is this idea that older workers will not be as efficient, not be as fast. The quality and productivity won't be as good. The cost will be higher, but that's wrong. I also learned that older workers are out of work much longer. Generation did this survey, and it was a worldwide survey, 7 countries, and it was across the board. Workers who had been out of work for more than a year, 36% were 18 to 34, and 63% were over age 45. And they're anxious about their jobs. 33% of employees aged 45 or older feel that they could lose their job within the next year due to their age. And here's one that's just alarming, and this is from Zippia. Half of full-time workers between the ages of 50 and 54 will lose their jobs involuntarily. And it's even harder for women. We have the money bias. We're still not making as much. It's still harder to get a job if you're a woman. And with all these statistics, it's looking pretty dismal. So no wonder I was having a hard time, right? And so what are the costs? Involuntary retirement. A lot of older workers just have to retire early. Lower earnings because they take on part-time work instead of full-time work because you do what you can. Missed opportunities for raises. So just as a little perspective, I currently make $15,000 less per year than I made in 2012. And in today's dollars, that's more than $20,000 a year. Times that by the years between then and now, and you can see how it compounds. So I'm going to have to work longer. Lost earnings because of layoffs and terminations, and longer periods of unemployment. And all of this can lead to depression, medical issues, and greater healthcare costs, greater need for caregivers, and even early death, according to the World Health Organization. So this is just dismal and depressing. And employers are paying the price too. They're losing out on the experience. So think about legacy companies that have been around for 100 years. People revere older companies. They have trust in them. They feel safe with them. They know what they're doing. But it's the opposite for older workers. So the companies, it's good for the company to age, but it's not good for the workers to age. That doesn't even make sense. We need to value experience and the work ethic and the skills and the high productivity and the soft skills that we've picked up over the years. Last night, I was handing out Halloween candy with my neighbor who's in her 50s. And she said, you know, the younger me would have needed to be at that water cooler to gossip with all the people that are there. Now, I just want to get my work done. I'm so much more productive, she said. 20, 30 years ago, I would have had to be in the know of everything going on. No more. She said, these people don't get their work done. So how much does it really cost the economy annually? 100 million, 500 million, a billion? What do you think? Any guesses? $850 billion a year. And that's in 2018, so it's gone up. And by 2050, it's expected to cost almost $4 trillion. That's in loss to GDP. So this is a really serious issue, people. But there are solutions, and we can do something about it. So let's do it. What can you do as a corporate leader? You can change your corporate culture to be more age inclusive. And how do you do that? Create mentoring programs. Put older people with younger people in mentoring groups. Have them share information. We can learn so much from younger people, and younger people can learn so much from older people, and we never take advantage of that. And I want to share a little personal side note. Had I not gone through this journey, I would not have my job today. I have a job where my boss could be my child. She is decades younger than me. That I would not have been comfortable with that. But now I love it because I know she's got a lot that I can learn from. And same with me. So it's a wonderful partnership. Evaluate your corporate culture through the lens of age inclusivity. What are you doing that you could be doing better? Are you having company parties with 80 on the cake? And the person's not 80? If they are 80, great. Celebrate it. Value experience, as I said. You know, experience comes with a wealth of knowledge. Let's not dismiss it. Provide training, not just to your workers about ageism, but to your older workers about how they can pick up some skills that they might be missing. And be accountable. Own it. Talk about it. If you see ageist behavior, somebody is not going to file a claim if you get together and talk about it and try to improve it. And what can you do if you are an older worker? Well, it goes both ways, right? You better get the training or you will be left behind. 93% of jobs need digital skills. So, and don't forget AI, and we're going to talk about that too. Get the training, and you can get it through your work. If they don't provide it, ask for it. And there are also a multitude of ways to get it. There's LinkedIn Learning. There's Allison, which is Khan Academy for grown-ups. There is so much out there. And own your age and balance it with the opportunity for growth. So what this means is, yes, you have experience and you have a lot to share, but don't stop growing. Don't be unable to change or accept new information or ways of doing things. Embrace younger workers. Look on your LinkedIn profile. How many connections do you have with people under 30? If there are 0, you need some. And don't just use it as a number. I have this many people. No, reach out to them. This is an opportunity. And know your fit. Knowing your fit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, is critical to how you fit in, how you're successful, and to identify really, if you're not happy, why? And then listen. In my research, I met with one of the HR directors of a company that didn't hire me. I reached out and said, hey, I'm writing a book. I need to talk to you. Will you meet with me? She said yes. And I said, why is it so hard for older women to get jobs? And she said, well, because they don't listen. And I said, what? And I didn't want to listen. So I sat back and realized I'm doing exactly what she said we do. And I thought, okay, I'm going to hear her out. And she said, they just talk so much and they don't listen. And I thought, gosh, do I do that? And I had to think back, and I thought about a meeting at one of these companies I worked for. 10 or 12 people sitting around the table, maybe one other woman. And I was dismissed. Every word that came out of my mouth, they interrupted me, they moved on, they just didn't let me talk. So instead of listening to what anybody was saying, I was looking for opportunities to jump in and add value, because that's what we need to do. And I realized I stopped listening. So yes, I was guilty of this, but for good reason. But I took it to heart and thought, okay, I'm going to be a better listener from now on. I'm still working on that. And speak up about ageism. And if you're job hunting, taking everything on the last screen and demonstrating it in a job interview will help you get the job. And the most important one is talking about fit, because employers will tell you how important fit is. So if you're not going to fit in, and I hear it all the time, oh, that person doesn't fit. Is it because they're too old, or do they really just not fit? What does it mean? So what you can do as an employee: be aware. That's really the key. Understand that ageism is out there. Recognize it. Speak up if you see it. Engage with workers of all ages, and know the laws. So let's get fit. Let's talk about fit. As I said, it is the most important thing that hiring managers look for beyond experience and the basic qualifications. They want to know you're a good fit. Well, what I learned from Generation is that people over 45, only 15 to 18% are considered a good fit. That's really depressing. We've got to change that. So why is that? So I created this thing called a fit model, which is a play on words. And it's a bunch of questions that you can ask about corporate identity, work environment, pay policies, growth opportunities, and financial health. And it's to help you evaluate if you're looking for a job, or if you're in your job and you want to find out, am I a good fit here? But it's also great if you are a hiring manager to think about and to make sure that you build this in to your hiring practices and identify it, define what fit is, and ask specific questions about it. So that if an ageism claim comes back at you because you said somebody wasn't a good fit, you can actually say what the good fit is. And turn the no pile into the learn more pile. So I actually read an article that some companies have policies to dismiss, just throw them in the trash, a resume or hit that delete button for anything with a vintage email address. So what's a vintage email address? Well, I had one for many years. I did get rid of it about 10 years ago. Has anybody heard of packbell.net? Yeah. That is showing your age, right? And I didn't want to let it go because it was a historic email. It was one of the first ones, but Hotmail is another one that'll get you thrown right in the delete button. And even Yahoo. So the article said, this is a real risk. If you have a written policy to do that, you are waiting for an ageism claim. But what you can do as a hiring manager is make sure that your HR department isn't doing this. Don't dismiss resumes of over 2 pages. Don't dismiss for gaps in caregiving. Don't dismiss older credentials. So has anybody been told, don't put your graduation year on your resume if it's more than 20 years ago, or 10 years ago? Don't do it. I am calling that out and saying that is wrong, because if I get a resume without a year, it's just a flag that says I'm ashamed of my age. So I say put it on there and own it. And what about caregiving? What percent of employers or employees are caregivers? 73%. So, and this includes caring for children and adults. But when you get over 40, the number goes way up because you're caring for your elderly parents often too. And I deal with this. I take care of my mom. In fact, she's been buzzing me while I've been standing up here. And I take her to the doctor, and not a week goes by where I don't have to take her to an appointment during work hours, because Kaiser doesn't have appointments that aren't between 8 and 5. So there has to be some flexibility built in. And knowing the laws is critical. So there are 2 that you need to know. First is the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967. Oh, I wrote 1667. Well, that is a, it might as well be, because it's ancient and needs updating. But it will protect you for companies of 20 or more employees. And in California, we have the Fair Employment and Housing Act, and this one protects 5 employees and up. And it also protects contractors, volunteers, whether they're paid or not, interns, paid or unpaid. So pretty much anybody that comes in contact with your company. So tips for supervisors and managers who have an older employee, like my boss, who has me reporting to her. First, get your head out of the sand and talk about ageism. And I like to use the word entice. Have an enticing conversation with your team. And this is actually from an architect, Katja McLean. She was at the Housing Leadership Conference a couple of weeks ago that I went to. And she came up with this, it was a pathway of engagement. And I said, it spells entice? And she said, no, I didn't know that. And I said, can I use it for my presentation at BOMA? And she said, sure. So thank you, Katja, for this. Engagement. Get everybody in the room. Own the narrative. Build trust. Make sure that everybody knows this is a safe space. And you're going to screw up, but we're going to learn from it and move on. And we're going to iterate. We're going to get back together, and we're going to talk about it regularly and grow. And we're going to build community. Those team building exercises, they really do work. Just make sure they're age inclusive and empower your workers to come up with some of the solution. So entice. And what about AI? So I like to call AI Ageism Interrupted. And that is a reference to a movie from 1999, Girl Interrupted with Winona Ryder. So ageism is all the buzz. In fact, on the way here, I was reading an article about it, and President Biden just signed an executive order about it. It is kind of scary, and it's really, really, really important. And what percentage of workers have never used AI? Millennials and Gen Zs, only 14%, no surprise there. Gen Xers, 20%, and boomers, 27%. So as you think about AI with your companies and in your industry, my industry, our industry, AI is critical. And IoT, Internet of Things, and smart buildings, it's been around long before the buzz about AI, right? But think about AI and making sure you reach out to those boomers. So how old are boomers? I'm a boomer. I'm the bottom of the boomers. I am 59 years old. So boomers are 59 to 77. So how can AI help with ageism? It can help make you more efficient. It's fantastic if you are embarrassed about asking a question that you should know the answer to. Look it up. And this isn't just a Google search. AI is so much more than a search engine. And it's also there to answer questions that you want to ask. It takes the gulp out of learning new technology, and it will keep you relevant. And it's changing really fast. Even since I came up with this list, there are thousands of new AI opportunities out there. So a few examples are ChatGPT and Bard for content and how-to. Video.ai, which is text to video. And this is just one example. There are hundreds. Jamie for meeting minutes. My goodness, at the city where I work, we use AI to do our meeting minutes from public hearings. And without that, oh my goodness, saves so much time. And you still have to edit, but it takes a lot of the work out of it. Jasper for marketing content and industry applications in IoT, it is endless. So Bard. Bard is Google's storyteller, and it doesn't require any registration. Has anybody heard of it? Okay. So it's kind of Google's answer to ChatGPT. And so I asked it, and I was going to print it out here, but it just took the whole screen. What are the best rental registry software platforms? Because I'm working on this at work. And it printed out a list that was 3 pages long in 3 seconds. I also asked it, what is Google Drive? And how do I use it for my poor boss? 3 seconds, all the answers you need. And it's easy to go to bard.google. Just Google Bard and it'll come right up. And here's ChatGPT, and GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. No wonder they shortened it. However, it requires registration. And it is free. It's OpenAI, as you see the link, but there's also a paid version of it. And has anybody read Elon Musk's new book? He talks about it in there because he invested in OpenAI, and now there's a section, all his money was used for the private company. So he said, how does that work? But there is the OpenAI portion of it. And I asked Chat, what AI platforms are there for building owners and managers? Again, 3 seconds, 3 pages long. And then I asked it, what is Google Drive? And how do I use it? Okay, so show of hands, which do you think provided a better response for what is Google Drive? Google's Bard or ChatGPT? Who thinks it's Google? One would think, right? Well, I was shocked. The better answer came from ChatGPT. So this just goes to show you that using more than one platform is a good idea. Shop around, and there are a whole bunch of them. And they're all fast. They can really help you do your job. So here's Video AI, and I'm actually a beta tester for this company. It is, one of the co-founders is a woman I used to know, a journalist from Redwood City, and she's now running this company, Video AI. And so it's text to video. So I'm gonna see, let me go over here. So I asked it how to combat ageism in the workplace. That's all I typed in. And this is what it gave me.
Age discrimination not only affects morale, but also stunts the overall growth of an organization. Promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace can help combat ageism effectively. Incorporating age-friendly policies can help create a more welcoming environment for all employees. Continuous learning and development opportunities can help bridge the age gap in the workplace. Recognition and respect for the experience older employees bring can foster a positive workplace culture.
Pretty cool, huh? Literally 1 minute. So with this, you can edit the actual videos that it does. You can edit the text. It'll give you the base. You type in what you want and think about the opportunities you can do here for marketing. It's incredible. Oops, there we go. So with AI, it's not if you will use it, it's how you will use it and how can you use it to combat ageism. So to wrap up, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. And if you remember the name of the title of this talk, it's how to react to ageism. So I made an acronym again. I love this. I was an English major, and my whole book is full of plays on words. R for recognize. Recognize that it's a problem. Recognize it in your organization. Evaluate. Figure out how you can be more age inclusive. It's not that hard. Adopt policies and your corporate culture to match. Commit to it because remember the number, 4 trillion? It's a great investment for you. And train your workers about it and provide training opportunities because the training opportunities you think you're offering are probably not age inclusive. There may be some obvious things to somebody who's older. Oh my gosh, I need training on this, but my company doesn't offer it. So think about that. If there's stuff that everybody knows, everybody probably doesn't know it. So make sure you offer training. So here's how to reach me if you want to learn more. My email, easy, just remember my name. I'm the only one on the planet. And for my book, so my book is a memoir, and it's also a guide, and it's really I wrote it for middle-aged women to get your seat back at the table, but it applies to men too, and it applies to younger people too, as well as older. And so I hope you'll pick it up and enjoy it. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Danielle and I are now going to open this up for Q&A. So we're going to go down each side. If you would raise your hand if you have a question for Nori, we would love to answer any questions that you may have live in the field. But if there are additional questions that you have after the fact, we're more than happy to share them with Nori. Any questions?
Hello, Nori. Thank you for your talk. It was very informative.
Thank you.
So when you did come back into the workforce, how did the conversations go once you had those denials of employment opportunities? How did you come back to the table and say, I'm supposed to be here, I have the experience?
So it happened during COVID, and so I went back to consulting, and I had lost one of my biggest clients. It was Brisbane Baylands Corporation, if anybody knows, the 784 acres. And I couldn't be there for them. Why? Because I had to deal with my mom. My aging mother was in a different state, and I needed to move her, find her assisted living, sell her house, pack her up, all from out of state. And I couldn't be there for my client. I missed too many meetings, so they let me go. So I lost my seat at the table, and I went back to consulting after months and months of not being able to find a job. And one of my clients hired me. And that was kind of serendipitous because AB5, if anybody knows that law, it's the independent contracting law in California. Very controversial. It was, you probably all are familiar with it because Uber, it was really about Uber and making all those Uber drivers employees rather than contractors. And Uber won on that, but a lot of others lost out, including me. So consultants, if you were doing core work for one of your clients, you should be an employee. So I was on the website of this client. I had business cards with their, not mine, theirs. And I had a desk and an office. I was pretty much an employee. So they made me, I told them, I've become an expert on this law. I was actually, one of my clients needed me to do research on AB5. So I did. I went to Sacramento, I testified, and I told my company, you have to make it, I cannot be an expert speaking on AB5 and you don't hire me. So I forced them. I said, you have to do it or you're going to get a claim. Yeah. So I became an employee, and that's how I got my seat back at the table.
So you mentioned mentoring programs. Are there any specific activities or approaches that you've found particularly successful for companies when implementing those?
It's really just a matter of doing it, giving people an opportunity to get together in kind of a formal but informal way, like having a speaker series. Let's have one of our older workers talk about something they know that you might not know, or a younger worker talk. I mean, how many of us learn from our kids about how to use all the, they were born with the phones in their brains, right? They know everything about them. And last night was so funny because I took Bart here today, and I needed to make sure that I knew what time and put money on my Clipper card. I couldn't figure it out through the app. I couldn't, and I thought, oh my God, is this ageism? Is this stupid? Will my 22-year-old be able to figure this out? So I just said, enough, I don't want to get frustrated. So I went right to her and said, help me. And fortunately, she couldn't do it either. The app was completely glitching, and we finally figured it out. But it's getting together with those young people and just saying, make a list of things you want to learn, or have the young person make a list of things you should know that everybody knows. And to them, it's so obvious how to do it that we wouldn't even think about it. So sitting down and having this kind of formal session where you're going to sit and just talk to a young person about tech. Tell me what you know. How do you do this? How do you do that? So it's both a combination of formal and informal. But having the company just set up the 1 hour or 30-minute speed dating sessions of young and old and go from table to table to learn one new thing from something. And then you come away with a list of 25 new things. And it's fun.
Don't be shy.
Thank you for speaking.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, and I was wondering if in your research before you did your book, did you do any research on other cultures or countries and kind of their experience with ageism or lack thereof, kind of examples that maybe they do it better or worse or have a better kind of statistics?
So I didn't do research on it, but I have lived overseas. My twin sister lives overseas. And one of my podcasts interviews for the book was with somebody from Ireland. And he told me, oh my gosh, we need you to work with the UK government because before Brexit, it was you could work anywhere. And as soon as Brexit happened, they lost a lot of workers. And all their older workers had been displaced. So there The UK has so many older workers who couldn't find work. Now they need them. So they're doing a campaign to get older people back to work. So I can tell you from the research from Mona and Generations, it is around the world. It's in every single country. And even countries that culturally treat their elderly better and take care of them. You know, in many countries, you would never dream of putting your parents in a home. But in this country, it's like, oh, they can't live with me. Are you kidding? So even those countries, you face ageism at work. So it is across the board, and shockingly across the board. And there is a handout with links, and we're going to send it. If you want to read that study, it's just incredible how prevalent it is around the world. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question that one of our committee members sent in ahead of this talk that we're having. What are the most successful systems you've seen companies implement to unite team members across generations?
Yeah, and that goes back to some of the ideas that I had. The most important one is just to hire older workers. At my company, we just hired somebody who is 62, and it's his first time working for a municipality. And was it a risk? Yes, because in government, people retire at 55. You know, you get your pension, 55. It used to be, now it's 62. But people don't come into city government older. And there's a perception that they're about to retire. Well, I can tell you, somebody who's looking for a job at that age is probably not thinking about retirement. They're probably going to be there quite a while. And when they hired me, they didn't know quite how, they did know how old I was because it was on my application, but the person interviewing me didn't know. And I tend to look I've always looked younger. Like I said, when I was in my 20s, they thought I was in college. When I was 30s, it was the intern. And now I still look younger. So I don't think they realized that I was close to 60. I'm going to be 60 in a couple of months. But I'm not looking at retirement. At 62, I'm going to be working probably for the rest of my life because I enjoy it. But yeah, hire. That's the best thing you can do. Just hire those older workers.
I know in our community we have a lot of organizations that are at different stages with their DEI kind of implementation process. For those different types of organizations, what would be like your final kind of thoughts on incorporating more ageism programs internally? I know you touched on it on your slides, but what are the main specific things as a final takeaway that you would give to our attendees today?
I would set up a program to help with recognition that there is an issue. Just, the example of the cake. I mean, that is just, to me, it was just incredible that they thought that was okay, but they really did. So that tells you how it permeated throughout. So having an awareness campaign, whether it's a management meeting where you have a speaker and a topic or just a few slides about it, and just have people ask, have you experienced ageism? Are you seeing it here? Do a survey. Have you experienced ageism in our organization? If you do an anonymous survey, people are much more willing to talk. And, it is hard because if you are supposed to know something as an older worker, you don't want to be seen as out of touch or not able to do something. So a lot of people that are suffering from ageism are hiding it. So having an anonymous survey, having a management meeting where you just, I'm going to use the table reference again, throw it out on the table and get people talking about it is the best thing you can do. And then hire older workers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I want to touch on a little bit about the reverse ageism.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it earlier and thought that we would talk about it a little bit more. And you were in a position at the time where the people that reported to you were much older.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, how did you handle that? How did they receive that? And do you have any suggestions for anyone else, especially because in commercial real estate, a lot of the push is to bring in more younger people, more youth from whether it's college and things of that nature. But when they get there, that is also a plight that they can also go through as well in terms of reverse ageism. And what's the balance, I guess, where the rubber meets the road kind of
So
thing?
when I became their boss, I sat them down and said, I am not going to tell you how to do your jobs. You guys, whoever said the word guys earlier, I used that gender neutral. You guys, and it was all men, are the experts. So I am not here to get in your way. I am here to help you do your job. And I happen to work for a very hierarchical, administrative-oriented corporation where there was a lot of admin. And so I told them, I'm going to shield you from all of this so that you can focus on doing your jobs. So that's what I'm here for. I am a facilitator as much as I am a supervisor, and I'm going to support you, and my job is to help you do your job. So having that kind of attitude is what made all the difference. And over time, they respected me because I respected them. And I didn't, I had an appraiser working for me. I wasn't an appraiser. And I had somebody who had worked with the company for more than 35 years. I'm not going to tell him how to do his job. So having that humility and understanding that it's a two-way street is the key. It's the key. And with my boss now, she's not a micromanager, not trust, letting go and trusting your workers that they know what they're doing is key. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Marie has another one over here.
This is a fascinating topic for me. So when you were saying you spoke to the government and the state government about the acts that were being enabled, it kind of reminded me of, I forgot exactly which federal hearing there was about Facebook and Twitter being in front of the panel, and just the questions that were coming out. Because in my head, I thought, that doesn't make any sense, that what you're asking. The people on the panel were older because, in politics a lot of time there's no time limit of when they're in their seat. So I was wondering, how do you approach a subject where you see that there is a disconnect and that both parties would be benefiting from getting more information that actually makes sense to help?
Wow, that is such a double-edged question because, in one of the classes that I'm taking right now, we had to throw out news and they gave us the topic that we had to relate our topic to. So my topic is ageism, and the news thing that I had to relate it to was the presidential election coming up. And so I decided to talk about the age of the candidates and the age of Senate. The average age of the Senate is 64. The average age of a congressperson is 58. So, and so I had to really ask myself, okay, am I okay with having an 82-year-old president or a 68-year-old senator? Or we just had our Senator Feinstein pass away. And I truly thought it was time for her to retire a long time ago. I have had the privilege of meeting her. She is wonderful, but I personally believe she should have stepped down before. But so it's an important question because there is this disconnect, and it's a huge gap. It's a huge gap. I think the overall answer is please run for Congress and Senate and maybe president. Let's get some younger people at the table. It's really important because this goes to that whole topic of learning from the young people and not being open to growth is the biggest problem. And so, we need to look at it from that angle too, because there is a big disconnect. So there's no easy answer other than acknowledging that the problem exists and getting involved at a young age. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm going to just jump in here. In closing, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this candid conversation on ageism. There are so many steps that individuals or companies can take to prevent ageism in the workplace and promote age diversity. Every single one of us is aging. And we can start today by taking what we learned here as the initial steps to shift our perspective, see the benefits, promote diversity, inclusivity, and belonging in ourselves in the workplace. Nori mentioned she put together a list of resources that we can send to attendees today. She also brought with her 2 copies of her book with like matching mugs. And so under 2 chairs, there's a winner sticker for
And
the
the
2
mug
winners.
says, "Who's at your table?"
Yes.
And I wanted to just say, too, that the fit model that I put together, I printed that out, the excerpt from my book. You get it for free, and you can pick it up on your way out if you're interested in learning about the fit model.
Let's all thank Nori again for speaking with us and sharing
Thank
with
you,
us today.
everybody.
We
It
really
was
appreciate
wonderful.
you.
I hope you learned something.
Please stay tuned for future Candid conversations in 2024. If there is a topic of DEI that you'd like to know more about, please contact us or our committee. For anyone interested in joining the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, or you're looking to sponsor any of the events or work we do, you can contact myself or Ebony directly. All right. Thank you all very
One
much.
final applause for Nuri. Thank you so much for attending.